What is going on, boys and girls of YouTube? So we just ended our series yesterday. It was my favorite characters or gods in every role, and I wanted to take a gap before we go into our next series. If you guys have any ideas for series that you think will be awesome, drop them in the comments below. I think I'm gonna have you guys vote on the next series that we do before season 10, just so we can get in a really strong one that you guys want. So I'm not wasting my time or your time, basically. So yeah, today's video, as you can see in the title, I wanted to do kind of what changes we need, like a video on what changes we need for season 10 and what I personally want to come from season 10. Now, granted, I do know a lot of what's coming in season 10, so I'm pretty much just gonna hit on the things that I've been harping on for the last this year for sure. Most of the stuff is things you guys will have heard me talk about, at least bits and pieces, if you've watched stream or if I've mentioned just little things in videos this year. And then some of the other things I've been talking about for 2 to 3 years, pretty much 3 years. Some of these things I can think about. The major changes the game needs to spice it back up, to bring it back to life, to refresh it for all of us who've been playing the game for years and years and years consistently. It's not that Smite is bad by any means. Anyone saying Smite is bad is trolling. It's that the Smite's a game that you usually get into and you stay into. You don't leave. You get stuck here forever. And when you're stuck here forever playing the same game forever, if it isn't going through really big alterations that make it feel fresh to you, then you'll stop playing. A lot of Smite's issue right now is the player base. It's the people that are still playing are not happy and are playing it, and they're just playing it to play it. And then the fact that a lot of people have stopped playing. I know a majority of people who watch me have not played too consistently over this last year. So these things are things I believe will bring back what we love about Smite and make it feel good again. And that's just kind of been my thought process the whole year. I still like the game. I just think the issues are the lack of consistent, changes that feel good, and then the player base dwindling because of that those lack of changes. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, and it's like the obvious one, and it's the map. We've pretty much been playing on the same Smite map for I know for sure the last 3 years, but I think when we pulled up the maps, like the last 5 years, we've been playing pretty much on the same map for 5 years with very little changes here and there. This last year, literally last year, season 8, they tried adding vines that moved up and down. They tried a living map, and it was a cool idea. It would have been a cool idea on a new map. So if it was a whole new map and had that, I think it would have been dope, but it wasn't. It was the same map with like vine walls that went up and down, which was horrendously boring and terrible and added nothing to the game, and it was kind of a joke. This last year, they've done the Trebuchet and the Scepter, and the Scepter originally came out of the pillar that you stack up, whatever it's called, the obelisk, stacking up the obelisk. Then it turned into the Trebuchet coming from the obelisk. Then they added the Scepter back in to a side camp on the duo lane. So it's really clear they're just cycling through quick fixes and they're not working. The Trebuchet is boring and worthless and nobody cares about it. The gold you get from the obelisk is a high level thing that adds a lot of value to the game at a high level, but an average level in a regular game, people don't pay any attention to it. People don't care. It just doesn't matter to them. It's not part of the natural flow of the game. It's a forced aspect that just didn't hit. It didn't do it. And then on top of those, like, those are the changes we went through, we haven't had the pathing from one lane to the other change, which has caused a mass just consistency in early rotations from every role, from every lane to every other lane. Mid lanes rotating like junglers, solo laners going mid, duo lanes rotating mid. You got solos going over to the duo. Like, the amount of grouping and rotating is at an all-time high. And yes, it's because people are getting better, but they're getting better because the pathing and everything has been the same. You've been able to build off of that same knowledge just for year after year after year. And once you play the same thing for 3 years, you start doing crazy stuff because everyone's expecting the basic stuff. That's why you see in the SPL, you see crazy picks like assassins in mid. It's not because it's the best thing in the world. It's because the meta and the rotations and the grouping and everything has been the same for so long that spices it up and throws everybody off. So that's why you're seeing this. Now, with that being said, with this next season, I'm hoping they expand the map. It doesn't have to get massively bigger. It doesn't need to be like the original map, which is just trash. It does need to either widen or just all around get a little bit bigger. And with that, I believe they need to change the pathing on the map. The lanes and the rotations that go from one lane to the other, go through the jungle, need to change. They need to be less straight. They don't need to become narrower. Narrower will equal kind of bad fights. I like the sizing, and really I truly like a lot of the way the map is laid out. But they have to change the pathing so it's not straight across. It literally takes no time to run from one side of the map to the other. There's no forced weird angles or pathing. You can kind of go wherever you want and take one of 4 routes to get there, and all of them don't take very long. So that's what I'm truly hoping. They widen the map, and when they widen the map, they realign all the pathways from one side to the other. The goal of this is to bring back early fights and ganks that are ganks and not 4 and 5 man groupings. So junglers ganking a dual lane or a side lane without the mid lane and the other side lane in that fight at 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. Also, so any fights or ganks are true fights or ganks without rotations within 2 to 3 seconds. A lot of the time right now, if you're a jungler ganking a lane, or even you're a support that gets a good rotation off for a gank, the enemy team is able to react and rotate before it is physically possible to kill somebody. It's impossible. If you have actives and you're actually using your movement correctly, a lot of those ganks take too long. And that's not necessarily the damage in the game. We already know the damage in the game is very high. It's more of how quickly everyone else can rotate, and it's not a loss of value anywhere on the map for them to rotate. They aren't losing a full wave. They aren't losing a lot of farm anywhere. They aren't missing gold, HP. There's no loss. There's no pressure loss. It's good to rotate, and that's what everybody does right now. And I don't think it's good for the game. I think it's very bad for casuals and ranked. I think it's kind of makes sense at a high level that it happens, but you want to diminish that and reduce the occurrences of that in the early game. The mid game and late game, that should be happening. That's normal. Laning phase ends at some point, right? But it shouldn't end at 3 minutes. It should end at 10 minutes, 12 minutes. You should allow the game to develop and allow you to have some 1v1s. It adds more interesting moments to the game too, to, you know, as an ADC, be able to try to take your 1v1s and prove you're the better ADC in that game, or as a solo, go damage gods instead of these tank gods, because you know you're gonna be able to fight and play around that and play around your farm. It adds more depth to the game, and I think it's necessary at this point, and it's something that we really need, and that's, you know, why I'm hoping those map changes come. Now, I mentioned in the map changes and ganks being too long. Like, somebody can survive for a very long time and allow for counter rotation. They got to do something about beads and Aegis. We were talking about this the other day. I'm pretty sure in every other MOBA, there is no invulnerability like Aegis that allows you to move around in other games. So, like Aegis and Smite, you can pop it and move, and you're safe, and you can reposition, and I take no damage. Every other game, you sit completely still when you have these invulnerabilities. You also usually don't have an invulnerability and a active like beads that removes all CC on you. They usually don't coincide together. It's usually one or the other. So I'm hoping with season 10, they either nerf both if you're going to be able to keep buying both, or they make it so you can only have one. We saw in the SPL, there's a period of time where you couldn't have beads and Aegis. They wouldn't work together. It was a bug, but they had to play through it. So we saw a lot of matches where Aegis wasn't built. So you saw new gods come out like Poseidon because the Krakens could land. And you saw a lot more action and fighting in ganks because of it. Because that survivability wasn't there. Plus, at a real raw level of the game, Aegis is I messed up, I'm not as good, or I'm not playing as well as this other person, save me active. Take that away, everyone has to play better. So bad players will be exposed more, they will be outed more, and you will see them perform worse. those good players who are making really good plays or good positions or good engagements or catching these other players will be rewarded rather than punished, and it will cause more action in the match. It'll even, like, for those same teams, your own teammates will die. So it's going to be a mix of these characters that usually go Aegis, who can play better, who can position better, and who can adapt better to it. I think that would be the next best thing they could possibly do next to changing the map. Truly, like, I think that alone this year would have changed the whole year if they'd have done something like that early in the year, and it would have been, honestly, it just would have been awesome to see. I would have loved it. So I'm hoping for that. That's really hoping for that season 10. That's one of the things I doubt ever happens. Hasn't been changed in so many years that I don't see it happening, but it'd be dope. This year, we've gone through a lot of bad item changes, like really bad item attempts from Hi-Rez. They've honestly, I don't know what exactly they were thinking, but they put in the rings. You got the bobble. We had the hoops, the spikes. We got the auto attack one right now. These items were a fail for multiple reasons. So at its core, of course, the tanky version of them were OP, and they're still very strong after multiple nerfs. On the flip side, the damage one was worthless, but it was a potential content creation item, which was then nerfed into the ground and can't be used as that either. So it's literally like it's not in the game. It's completely worthless. And then the auto attack item was horrendous, and they overhyped it. Like, it was insane how much they hyped it up like it was useful. It had no effect on the game at all. Then we saw some changes go through, and then SPL players were starting with it, but then still selling it late game because it was trash. So we just saw a lot of fail. We saw a bad version of it, another bad version of it, then made it even worse. And then the two tanky ones, which are already buffing characters that are having a severe impact on the game, and people are hating the tanks and your hybrid tanks and warriors and guardians, whatever, getting these crazy good items that they couldn't balance. They need to wipe this tree completely and start over. Just absolutely wipe it, start over, act like it never happened, and go from there. If they can do that, I think they'll be in a better place. They also tried to rework masks. Masks, we've gone from masks to starters, to this, to that, to all kinds of different places for masks. They can't balance them. Start over. Just wipe them, delete them from the game. New tree, new idea. Because these two ideas, honestly, we've seen since they both come out, just go through iteration after iteration of fail. We need new items. We need spicy, new something, actives that are cool and unique. We don't need the stats to be crazy. We don't need anything nuts on that end, but the actives, the things, the procs, the passive, those are what we want. And obviously they're struggling with these. So I think they remove these. They look back at their current items and they update them completely. When I say update, I mean you take the passives off and you give them new passives that are working and just better. Absolutely better. On top of those items, the glyphs were added. Glyphs are dope, but if they're just gonna keep adding to them, it's gonna be a problem. They've already moved them. We had like Rod at Tahuti with the attack speed glyph. It got moved over to Bancross with the attack speed glyph, which is cool, but they need to stop doing that. Once we go through a glyph, through a season or a half a season or a couple patches, whatever, kill it. Remove the glyph from the game, vault it, put it away, and add a new glyph to a new item. So it's cool and exciting and refreshing, where we're not just grabbing another glyph that does the same thing on a different item. It's boring. That's terrible. Vaulting it, adding new items with new glyphs over and over again every 3 months, 4 months, whatever, it would be so cool to see just new passives on old items. If that's what they have to do to keep, if they can't keep adding passives, they can't come up with new ideas that work. Do that. Just tweak the current passives, build on them, and put on new items every couple months. That adds a lot. That would be sick. It would be glorious. I would love to see it. So we went over the fail items. We went over the glyphs. We went over the Aegises. I think, realistically, I want to talk about this before we move on. I think Hi-Rez does an insanely good job balancing this game. There are like 100 plus items. Most of them are good, useful, or valuable. The gods were over 100 and they're almost all playable. So Iris is doing a good job. Like I keep saying, the game is good. It's just because we're spoiled, we need refreshing stuff added to the game because we're used to it. And that's literally what it comes down to. This year, I've really focused a lot back to looking at buffs, which they've always tweaked year to year. All the buffs are good, except for, in my opinion, speed buff is terrible. I think it's absolute trash. It's still the only one that requires you to do something to get the full use out of it. Purple buff has an aura pen and then attack speed. Just there all the time, right? Red buff gives you power. And then if it's the upgraded version, it gives you lifesteal. Blue buff gives you cooldown and mana regen. If it's the upgraded version, it gives you double the cooldown. So 20% cooldown. That's an insane stat, right? 20% cooldown is make or break in a lot of builds. Could completely make a build OP. Green buff, mid to late game, is giving some support players 300 to 500 HP. Flat, straight up. Then you go to speed buff, and you realize it gives you movement speed, but it only gives you the full movement speed if you kill creeps and stacks, and then that only lasts for 15 seconds or whatever it is. And then it gives you CCR, which is a cool stat, but as an assassin, if you're being hit by CC, you're going to die before that CCR impacts it enough to keep you alive, because you're an assassin. You take a lot of damage to do a lot of damage. They either need to tone down the other buffs, or they need to finally put speed on the same level of all the other buffs. It's ridiculous that it's the only one that stands out and is clearly worse stats than all the other ones. When I say stands out, I mean it has to be stacked to get its passive. It's the only one you have to do. You don't just get it as soon as you pick it up. It's absolutely insane that it is the worst statted one when, you know, compared to what it's going to. CCR in the solo lane would have kind of made some sense. Cooldown in the jungle would make a lot of sense, right? Swapping those two stats if you really wanted to go that route. But you wouldn't do that because that buff makes the solo lane super strong. Speed buff has no impact on the jungle. Jungle at some point, a lot of the point in game, wants to pick up red because it's way more useful, especially if you're carrying. They need to relook at buffs, whether, like I said, it's nerfing the other buffs or bringing up speed buff, whatever, or changing them completely to something they have some new idea they have. Dope. I don't even know what the new ideas would be, but I think that would be a very good idea. Talking about buffs, boss camps, Fire Giant and Gold Fury, they're over. They're so boring. When I say they're over, I mean, to me, they are just so repetitively boring that it's time to move on. We're hitting season 10. If they were to completely delete Gold Fury, completely delete Fire Giant, and add brand new bosses with new abilities that give different or new buffs, that would be a glorious change. I think it would be just one of the best things in the world. To like, that excitement would make you start thinking objectively again, like, let's go for this objective, let's do this, instead of just going for kills. I've noticed, especially in the last couple months, people will W key kills extra hard, whether it's a ranked game or a sweaty game, whatever. It's a game you want to win. They'd rather go for the kills than go for the objectives. It's crazy. And I think it's because the objectives are boring. They're not exciting. Getting them is not an awesome feeling. Stealing it's kind of cool because it's something that shouldn't happen, but just getting this regular old buff over and over again that we've gotten for years, it's so dead to me that I think we just wipe them and we move on. Something brand new. I just think that would be fantastic. And then in the mid-season this year, we saw a big change where they made everyone tankier, more health, more base defense. I think that was a terrible idea. From the start, I was glad they were making a change. I was hoping it would work, but it seemed like a terrible idea. It's very obvious to me as someone who plays the game all the time, and really, I can't see how this doesn't seem like an issue. Base damage numbers in Smite are ridiculous. You can literally build full defense on a lot of characters, not just warriors and guardians, some assassins, you see some mages, a bunch of other stuff, and impact the game with such high amounts of damage that you would think you were building full damage. That doesn't happen just because of cooldown and spamming abilities. That happens because of base numbers. The base damage on abilities being 400, 500, 300, 400, 500 is ridiculous. You should only be doing noticeable large amounts of damage if you are building damage. You have to up the scaling. Scaling is when you take a percentage of your power from the items you built and add it to the damage on your abilities. So instead of 300 base and a 30% scaling, they can make it 200 base and a 60 or 50% scaling, right? They can up the scaling, lower the base on almost everybody. I'm sure they would have to go look through. It would take forever because 100 gods. It wouldn't take forever, but they'd have to do some work to see who really needs true base number changes. But it would be most characters, or it would be over half. We'd probably be talking about 80 characters getting their base damage reduced and their scaling upped. I think it would change the game so much. It would potentially make the support role completely new, because if you're looking at being a damage dealing support or having a huge impact, you might start building some more damage items. And then maybe you're looking at the solo laner now doing less damage, but building way tankier and playing more like a true initiator in your face character that can't die. And hopefully the idea would be, if they're going to change all that, their survivability would go up in the late game. So solo laners right now do too much damage and are unkillable until the hyper late game. Hyper late game, they can't keep up and they insta die. So the goal would be they would maintain their tankiness throughout the whole game, or anyone who's trying to be a frontliner, tanky, whatever character, would maintain their survivability. Their survivability would spike, but their damage will be lower. And then in the late game, they wouldn't die as fast. They would still be able to do their job, but they wouldn't be doing tons more damage. That would be my overall goal. But I think there would be potential meta changes in that we've never seen before, because it's never been done before. So that's something that would excite me if they somehow managed to do it. Once again, I think because the base defense changes they added failed, or in my mind they failed, they seem like they don't impact the game at all. I think most people would agree. I don't think they'll do something massive across the board like that ever again, because they failed in the first place. Could be wrong, but it's possible. And yeah, those are my changes. Those are the ideas I have. Those are the things I think would really impact Smite in so many ways. And not even doing all of those ideas, obviously. You did one or two of one of those big ideas, and then you took like the small ideas like buffs or items, and you did that stuff for season 10. I would be excited to play the game. I would be very, very excited to play the game. If they did all of that, I'd feel like I was playing a new game, and I'd probably cry tears of joy, because it would be amazing. Obviously, easier said than done. There would be so much balancing and so many numbers to change, so much testing to do on their end. It would not be easy. I'm not stupid. But if they were able to do it, I think they're capable of doing it. If they were able to come through and do it, I believe, and do it right, I believe the game would be the best it's ever been, and probably better than any other game you could possibly play right now. So that's what I'm hoping for season 10. Those are my hopes. Those are the changes I'm looking for. I've mentioned all of these ideas all year long, over and over and over. I think I did a video in the middle of the year, like what I'm hoping they change in the mid-season patch. I don't think they did any of it. I have a feeling some of the ideas from here are from that video too. Like, you're gonna see doubled up. I just hope something happens big for season 10. I'm excited to keep playing the game, but it needs the major changes that we're talking about to go through for that to happen. Hopefully you guys like this video of me talking, Danger's edits, whatever he adds to it. Hopefully you guys liked it. Hit the like button if you did. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow, the next day, and the next day.